David Parker was trapped in the grief of the loss of his two sons. But then they returned with a message and they were not gentle with him. Watch today's episode to find out what they said. 2 quick notes before we get into it. If you've had a profound spiritual experience that you would like to share on the show, you'll find the link to apply in the description box. And secondly, I'm giving away my Connect to Your True Self mini course for free. If you're interested, you'll find the link in the description box. I would love to start when you were young. As a child, you had some incredible experiences. What's the first experience you remember having?
When I was just a little kid, my parents were still in college. So my grandmother, my mom's mom, pretty much raised me. We lived in a tiny little farm in southern Ohio. We had no indoor plumbing. Our heat was a coal stove. We were out in the middle of nowhere. The bathroom was out the back door, across the yard, down the hill. We had an outhouse. So we were very, very isolated. And my grandmother was always in tune with spirit. And I remember as a little boy, sometimes she would say, "They're coming. They're coming. Get ready. Let's get ready." And she'd say, "Go get on the porch swing." We had a swing on the front porch. And she'd put her teeth in and fix her hair and put a little makeup on and, kind of make herself a little presentable. And she would run out onto the front porch and sit on the swing with me. And in front of our in front of our house, there was a road. We were about halfway down a hill, and it was a gravel road. The road went behind a barn and then up over another hill. And pretty soon we'd hear rocks kicking, people walking and kind of mumbling and talking. And pretty soon here would come a group of about 30 Civil War soldiers in their uniforms. And they were young boys. They looked like, teenagers, maybe in their early 20s. And they would straggle. Some would be in little groups of 3 or 4, and some would be by themselves. And some would, a little bit later, here'd come a few more. And they were in blue, so they were Union soldiers. They looked 100% solid, very young-looking boys, and their uniforms were like shot up, and the toes of their boots were curled up where they had been, probably been wet and dried that way. And some had guns, mostly didn't. And as a little child, I was lonesome out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, me and a 70-year-old lady, that was it. We had chickens. That was my playmate. So I would run up to the gravel road, and we got a TV. We got one channel, and we got some peanut butter. Why don't you want to come in and have a sandwich? I was looking for playmates, and they just ignored me. They didn't even look at me. They didn't acknowledge me, and I was a couple feet from them. And they would talk amongst each other. I could clearly hear the distinct tones of their voices, but for whatever reason, I couldn't understand a word that they were saying. And they would mumble. It wasn't like a whole lot of conversation. And they'd walk down the road and kick up rocks as they walked. And some looked really bad. Some looked very tired. And they were all so young. If I could draw some of their faces. I could still see clearly their young, boyish faces, dirty and soiled, and the thick fabric that made up their uniforms. And they'd go down the road and across the little bridge and behind the barn and then up over the hill and disappear. And after they were all gone, my grandmother would say, "Well, let's go have some supper. Let's go watch some TV." It usually happened in the afternoons. And sometimes it would happen at night. I would hear them at night. We would have the screens in the window when it was summer, and I could hear the rocks kicking, and I could hear their voices, and they would walk in front of the house. I couldn't see them. It was dark, and off they'd go. And this happened probably at least 50 times. And it was odd that my grandmother knew almost every single time. She knew when they were coming. And I don't know why she knew or how she knew or what was going on. And she never, explained what they were. but I definitely believe that they were spirits from the Civil War. This was back in the late 1950s, early 1960s. So the war had been over about 95 years, by then. And this is Southern Ohio, and I don't believe there was any war in Southern Ohio. But years and years later, I was watching a documentary on the Civil War, and it said that after the war, the horses were shot and the railroads were blown up and ships were sunk, and there was no way to get the soldiers back home. So many of them had to just walk home. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of miles. And sometimes families would come and in their horse and carriage and wait and hope to see one of their loved ones passing by and pick them up and take them home. But on the documentary, it said that so many of the soldiers that survived the war never survived the trip home. And I was just wondering if these little soldier boys, did survive the war, but, they're still trying to find home. After all these years, I could still clearly see their faces. And I just send them so much love and light. And I hope they finally did find their home. I haven't been back to the farm in like 55, 60 years. And I'm going back this summer. And the number one reason I'm going, I want to see if they're still there. I want to see if there's maybe something I can do. Maybe this is an experience that they need to have in their spiritual unfoldment. I mean, not everybody needs rescued. Sometimes an experience, all you need to do is just be aware of it and pay attention to it and learn your lesson. I don't need to fix them. But just in case, I just feel such a camaraderie with those young boys. So I'm going to make a video of it. We'll see if I see them. If I don't, I'll just send them love anyway. We're all on a journey. We're all heading home. And, that was my earliest recollection of seeing a spirit without a body. Yeah.
Are you feeling disconnected from spirit, from divine love, and from your true divine nature? I would love to work with you. In my sessions, I give a divine love transfusion to balance and support your energy field, as well as for any emotional or physical areas of need. And I give you intuitive feedback on simple implementable practices that you can take with you to shift your state of being from disconnection to deep connection with your divine nature and with your divine guidance and love. Packages of 1, 2, or 4 sessions are currently available. One session is perfect for a deep energy center tune-up and powerful divine love transmission, while a 4-session package is best if you're seeking a profound transformation. This is your invitation to open the door to connecting with the love that is already within you, that all the NDEers and spiritual experiencers talk about. Check the link in the description to sign up.
And, that was my earliest recollection of seeing a spirit without a body. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. It's incredible that you and your grandmother were both able to see them. And they say that gifts like this run in families.
It at least it does in our family. We have been so open about it. My grandmother and my parents, my dad was a medium. My mom saw spirits, and we'd sit around the table and just talk about if we had an experience, what we saw. And it was just normal for us. And, I'm sure a lot of people thought we were crazy. I know several, when we finally moved into town, we moved into a very small farming community town, but at least it had indoor plumbing. I mean, what a treat that was. And I still appreciate indoor plumbing. After all these years, living out there, it's amazing. It's amazing when you're lacking something and you finally get it, how that appreciation just goes on throughout your entire life. So anyway, we always talked about it. I had developed a lung infection when I was young, and I spent a better part of about 1.5 years inside Children's Hospital back east. And they would put me in oxygen tents and I was one of the first children to survive this. It was a fungal infection, which now you just take a couple pills and it's gone. But it was a big deal back then, back in the very early 1960s. And it was there that I had my near-death experience. And something had happened, and everybody was rushing in. And there was nurses and doctors and people working on me, and I'm in an oxygen tent. Back now, they have little cannula that they put oxygen into your nose. Or back then, they just put plastic all around you, and they would pump in oxygen. And I remember getting out of the bed and walking right through the side rails of the bed, and all these people that were working around me. And I got out of the room and I looked back at them. I thought, well, who are they working on? I was out of the body, but I didn't realize it. And as I walked down the hallway, out of my room and out of the hallway into this old hospital, there was like this ball of people, maybe a 100 or so, maybe more than that, just kind of swirling around in a ball. On the farm, sometimes we'd see a ball of snakes. I don't know what snakes were doing, but there'd be a bunch of snakes just swirling around and mingling. And I think it was several different species, maybe even of different snakes. That's kind of what these beings looked like. And they would stretch. It was like they didn't have bones, and just stretch and go in and out of a perfect round sphere. And it was in the hallway of the children's hospital. And I could see like the doctors and the visitors just walking right through them. They didn't see them at all, pushing carts and people in wheelchairs. And I was just seeing it clear as day. I have no idea what it was. But then this little girl came up to me, and she was the only person there in the hallway that could see me. And she says, "You want to go play?" And well, sure. I'm a kid. Of course I want to go play. So we walked down another hallway and we were outside. It was this beautiful, like a playground. And she wanted to play with a thing called a maypole. I had never heard of a maypole. I had to look it up. Years later, my mom told me what a maypole was. And it was this staff with a rope, and you grab a rope and somebody else grabs a rope and you run in a circle. It's not really that fun, but when you're a kid, after being in the hospital, getting to run and be outside and play with some other kids, it was just a dream. There were other children there, but it was just this girl and I kind of focused together, just she and I. And we were laughing and we were having a really good time and bouncing balls, and we did all kinds of things. She was kind of dark complected, and she had this very thick hair, and it was braided right down the middle of her back, went all the way down to about her waist. And she would giggle and laugh, and I would giggle and laugh. And then pretty soon she came up to me and she says, "Well, we can play a little bit longer, but you can't stay here." And I said, "Well, why can't I?" And she just says, "You just can't stay here." And so we played a little bit more. And then she came up to me and she says, "Tell my mom I love her. My name's Penny." She says, "My name's Penny. Tell my mom I love her." And I just knew, without her saying anything, who her mother was. Her mother was one of the nurses that had taken care of me many of the times that I was there in the hospital. I would come in and go home and come in and go. I was a frequent flyer there for a year and a half. So all at once, like the next thing I know, I'm back in the bed, and there's the tent, and all these people are working on me, and very painful things that they were doing, but evidently I coded and they saved my life. And, later on, I think it was that night or maybe the next night, here comes Penny's mom. She's my nurse, and came up to the side of the bed and was taking care of me. And I gave her the message. I said, "Penny said to tell you she loved you." And I thought I was doing something really nice for her. I mean, actually, I was. Her reaction was just shock. And my mom later told me she quit, that it freaked her out so much. But her little girl, Penny, who was dark complected and had the thick hair and the braid down the back, the middle of her back, had been ice skating on a pond, and the ice broke. and she drowned. And it was a long time before they found her body. And I hope it was healing for her. I hope I didn't cause any trouble, but I feel I did the right thing. I did the right thing for Penny. I gave Penny's message to her mom. And that was life-changing, absolutely life-changing. What a wonderful experience it was. I mean, it's terrible to think of being in a hospital for so long, but a spirit uses whoever is the best speaker, whoever's the best hands. A spirit needs bodies, mouths, and hands to do its work on the physical plane. And it'll pick the person that can do the job at that moment in that situation. And that's something I've learned throughout my whole life, is just to open myself up. And I start my day, use me as you see fit. I don't know what's going on. You do. You have a higher viewpoint than I do. So every single day I start my day, even in high school, I figured that out with these experiences. You know best. Use me as you will. And my goodness, throughout my life, it certainly has used me. What a great experience that was. I wonder whatever happened to that mother. I don't know. I finally got better and never had to go back. So,
are you walking a spiritual path alone and longing for a place where you can belong? I created the sanctuary for you. When you join the sanctuary, you'll get access to a thriving spiritual community with chat threads and forums where we discuss all things spiritual, as well as a growing library of practical tools such as meditation soundtracks, challenges, and recorded energy work sessions for you to use on your own time. My 8-week intensive course, Alchemy, is also available in the sanctuary, as well as a library of extended podcast episodes and exclusive live calls with experts in the spiritual community. I keep the sanctuary very affordable with multiple tiers that can fit every budget level, because I firmly believe that nobody should be excluded from spiritual community and resources. All tiers have access to all the benefits. Check the link in the description, find the tier that works for you, and come join us. I can't wait to meet you.
I finally got better and never had to go back. So,
well, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure, she asked you to give that message. And so perhaps even if the mother, if it freaked her out a little bit at the beginning, perhaps eventually over time, she was able to find peace.
Sometimes I'm not a very smart person, but I quickly learned that I have a delay learning. I'll get an experience or someone will say something, and then it's down the road. It's like, oh, now I get it. So, maybe you too. I'm time released. I'm great down the road or looking out the back window. That's when I get my wisdom. No, that was interesting. I had another experience very similar to that. And I was probably about 12 or 13 years old. And we lived in this small farming community. And for whatever reason, my mom liked this Methodist church that was just in the next town over, and a very small town. Both in very small town. I mean, we had like more corn and cows than people in this whole community. So on Sundays, we would drive. It was probably about 15 miles from our town to the next town with this tiny little Methodist church. And I think my mom had friends there, and that's why she went. She went to, help support them and enjoy them. It was a nice church. And I made good friends with this boy. He was about 16, so about 3 or 4 years older than I am. His name was Lee. And though he lived in a different city, we didn't get to hang out except just at church. And we would have Sunday school before the church service and play and talk. And he was like a big brother to me. Loved that guy. Well, one day we're driving to church. My dad's driving. My mom's in the front seat. I'm in the back seat. And as we drive down the road, it's a 2-lane road, and it's just nothing but corn for miles, miles of corn. And it'd be corn, 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 and then a little house, and then it'd be corn, and then it would be cows. So it was corn or cows, that's all it was, and a house every now and then. It was very flat. And as we're driving down the road, I'm seeing somebody, seeing something on the side of the road. And it looked like somebody dressed up. And as we're getting closer and closer and closer, I see it's my friend Lee from church. And he's got a nice dressed white shirt and black slacks and a black belt and his shoes. And on the side of the road, there was a big gully because we were in the Midwest and it rained a lot. And then a little bump just before it goes to the fields. And because it would rain, that would keep the rainwater from flooding the road. And on this little hill, it's about 4 feet above the road, that's where Lee was standing. And he was just staring off at the horizon. And I'm telling my dad, slow down, there's Lee, you might need some help. Shh, we just go right on by. And my dad said, I didn't say anything. My mom didn't say anything. So we just keep going. I don't think they wanted to be late for church. So we get to the church service. I went to Sunday school. Lee wasn't there. After Sunday school, then we would have our normal church service. And Lee's parents are crying. And finally, after the service, the minister says, everybody do a prayer for Lee's parents. I forget their last name. Lee hasn't been seen in a couple days. And my mom looked at me. She goes, don't say anything. So anyway, after the service, the first thing I did, I ran up to him and I said, we drove right by Lee on the way here to church. I told my dad to stop, and he didn't see him, so he just drove on by. Well, the parents were mad, and they come up to my parents. It's like, why didn't you stop and help our son? And my folks said, well, we didn't see him. Davey saw him. So they decided to follow us back home. And we're in our car, and they're in the car behind us. We're driving back home, and I was hoping I could find it because there's no landmarks out there. There's cows, corn, and a house there and there. That's it. And as we're driving back, there he is. He's now on the other side of the road because we're heading the other way. And I said, my dad, slow down. There he is. There he is. My dad just drives right by. I said, you passed him again. And my folks didn't see him at all. And so finally we got the car stopped, and I'm running back. My dad said, here we'll back up, but I figured he'll just take off. So I'm running back to where I'm seeing Lee, which was quite a bit, probably, maybe half a block or so. And Lee's parents stop their car. They don't see Lee. I'm the only one that saw him. So I'm running back to where he's standing. And finally I get to the spot. I'm standing on the road. He's about 4 feet over the road on this little hill that, it's like a levee. It keeps the water from flooding the road when it rains. And he's looking right over my head, looking out at the horizon. And I'm saying, Lee, what are you doing? Here's your mom. Here's your dad. They're worried about you. And he doesn't say a word. He just stands this, just staring out. He doesn't look down at me. I'm looking up at him. And, by this time, here comes my mom and dad, and Lee's parents are a lot older. They finally get there, and they're staring at me and, thinking, who are you talking to? They don't see him. And I keep saying, Lee, here's your mom. Here's your dad. They're so upset. And he didn't respond. And in the gully, the ditch, it was all filled with weeds. Being in the Midwest with all the rain, the weeds would grow really high. And generally what they would do is they would mow it in the fall, and just like once a year. My dad was so much taller than I was because I was a short little kid, and he could look down in the ditch and look down in the weeds, and he saw a handlebar sticking up out of the weeds. So he's starting to move the weeds around and sees a motorcycle down there and could see somebody's body. And he's pulling him up to his knees in mud and water. And I heard him say, it's Lee. He's gone. And that's when we found out that a couple of days prior, against his parents' wishes, Lee bought a motorcycle. And anyway, the mom passes out. She's down on the highway on the pavement, and her husband's trying to pick her up and take care of her. My dad's pulling and pulling and pulling, trying to get Lee's body free. I guess he was under the water, and I'm seeing Lee's spirit. It's still just standing there, dressed up like how he would dress in church. And as I look down at the mom, thinking, maybe there's something I can do, I heard Lee said, I'm sorry, Mom, very slowly. I look back at him and, I'm not seeing him look at me or look down at us or moving his lips. And I said to his mother, I said, Lee says, I'm sorry, Mom. It's like she's just freaking out. The husband's freaking out. My dad's just frantic, trying to get Lee's body out of the water. And by then, other cars are stopping, and my folks have me get in the car. You go sit in the car, and it was about an hour later. Someone called the police, and my dad gets back in the car, and my mom does, and we go back home. And, this is, we had dinner and we talked about it, and it's just pretty much a normal day, even though, this was bizarre, but not super bizarre for our family. We felt very bad about Lee, but, we were thinking, what an incredible blessing it was that I was able to see his spirit for whatever reason and give his final message to his mother. So that, we were thinking this, what an incredible experience. But later that evening, there's a knock on the door, and it's either the police or the sheriff. It's somebody in law enforcement. And they wanted to come talk to me. And I thought, well, that's fine. Sure. What do you want to know? Well, it ends up, they didn't believe for 1 second that I saw a spirit. They thought that the only reason I knew where his body was is because I ran him off the road. I was like 12 years old. I had a rickety old bicycle. I don't know how I'd be out in the country and run somebody on a motorcycle off. But they didn't believe me. They thought I killed Lee. And they came back another time and talked to me. And then after that, my parents put up a buffer, and they would only my parents would speak to the police, not me. Well, I lived in a farming community, and Lee lived in a farming community, and we didn't go to school together, but all the farming people knew each other and supported each other. So when I go to school, the kids were beating me up and shoving me into the lockers and tripping me and pushing me downstairs, saying, that's for Lee. That's, what you do to our buddy Lee. You shouldn't have done that to Lee. That's like, I didn't do anything, I gave his mother the final message. I found his body. Some people believe me. The farming people didn't. We returned to church, and there was some words spoken between the minister and my parents, and we got in the car and left. They said, we're not coming back. So I don't know if we were uninvited or if we were kicked out or what. My parents didn't share that with me. So finally, after, going through high school and I graduated, I left town, and I've never been back. And my parents, as soon as I got through high school, my parents sold the house and they moved away too. There was so much animosity over this for years. So, and I would hear from some classmates over the years, and they would say, when are you going to come clean about Lee? When are you going to tell what you did to Lee? It's like, I just gave up on him. Well, I graduated in 1973, and last year was my 50th high school reunion. And I never went to any reunion because I just didn't want to be around those people anymore. But this one, I thought 50 years, people have had wonderful experiences in their life, and, they're going to have some glimpses into the hereafter. And so maybe it'll be fun. So I was planning to go back, and then it was great because I was going to go head down and see the old farmhouse and see if the Soldier Boys were still there. And a week before my reunion last August, I got a call, and I was officially uninvited to my class reunion because of the thing with Lee. And that was probably 55 years ago that I found Lee's body. And to think that they have held on to this grudge against me and haven't advanced or appreciated that there's so much more than just the physical, that there is a spiritual realm, and people do touch into it. And sometimes you can step up and see them, and sometimes maybe they'll step down a bit and see us, but they didn't. And several of the classmates were trying to find distant relatives that might still be alive of Lee's to see if they could reopen the case. And I thought, oh my gosh, the torment as a kid, and they're still kind of chasing me with this. But I know I did the right thing. I saw Lee. I found his body. I gave his parents the final message. He apologized to his mom. Everything I did was right. And to me, it was a blessing. What an incredible gift to get to give to my friend, as he went on to whatever spiritual life that he went on. His parents were old. I'm sure they're gone, and they're probably all together and all happy now. And that was a marvelous experience I got to have. I think about that all the time.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm so sorry for how you were treated. You would think that after 50 years, and especially in the world we live in today, where this kind of information is a lot more widespread, you would think that people would be more open-minded.
Right, to have one or two spiritual experiences in half a century, that they would think that there certainly is a possibility that someone can see spirit. And especially, even if they're closed-minded religious people, I don't want to criticize people for whatever faith that they have, but to know that spirit goes on and on and on, that there's a part of us that, actually us, that moves on. I think we drop the body's not us, and the real spiritual form just keeps going. There's that incredible plus factor in spirit. But interesting. So my friends, and I told them what had happened, my friends had a barbecue for me. And so I was surrounded by people that loved me and supported me and adored me. And it was on the day of the class reunion. So I had a reunion, with all my good friends. And, we ate spare ribs and listened to music.
Oh, good. Sounds wonderful.
You pick your family. You pick your family.
So true.
You're born into one group, but you can always choose, who your tribe is throughout your life. The people that love you and support you are rarely related to you by blood or by community. I learned that young.
Yeah, so true. David, I would love to have you share about your after-death communication from your sons.
That was tough. I'll see if I can get through this. Yeah, I was a nurse. It's interesting. My grandmother that raised me was a nurse, and she was a nurse during the Spanish flu of 1917, 1918, 1919. And I just recently realized 100 years later, I was a nurse during COVID, which is, very a similar situation. But anyway, I became a nurse, and I worked high-risk labor and delivery. I worked newborn ICU. I was a very technical nurse because, people were so sick, and you have to monitor their labs, and you got to focus on just, keeping their lungs open and their heartbeat. And a very focused, very medical nurse in high stress and high focus areas. And I had two beautiful boys. And at the time this happened, they were 7 and 9 years old. Their mother had just died 3 months prior. She had cancer, and I took care of her. Best friend I ever had in my entire life had a terminal disease also. So I was taking care of him, raising the two boys, and working full time. And luckily, as a nurse, you can work 12-hour shifts. So you got 4 days off a week. And it was just go, taking care of everybody. Well, my friend died. The boy's mom died. And it was just me and the boys. Lovely, lovely, wonderful children. So one day I'm in the house, they're in the front yard playing, and I hear this horrible crash and people screaming. I hear the neighbors screaming. What on earth is that? So I go outside, and they were in the front yard, and someone chose to drink and drive. And I don't know how, they must have been speeding very, very fast and drove up on the lawn and crashed their car in the front of my house. And I go out there and I'm just staring at it and I'm wondering, what's all this red stuff? There's just red stuff everywhere and piles of it under the car. And it's just like my vision was almost blocked, as to what it was. And it was the bodies of my two boys. And I just standing there saying, what's that? It didn't register. It didn't make any sense. And I just stood there stunned, staring at this intoxicated man getting out of the car and looking around like he just landed from Mars. And the neighbors are running and trying to get the boys out from underneath the car. And here I am, I'm a nurse and the dad, and I just stand there. It's just like, what is this? I had no realization of what I was looking at. And finally, it kind of hit that the boys were there. Ended up they were dead. Oh my God, it was horrible. I had in-laws. That was the only family I had left. My parents had died. And they came and tried to help, to do the funeral. And they were more of a problem than help, but they showed up, and I'm so grateful. At least they showed up, and I was just frozen, absolutely frozen. And the silence in the house. I can't tell you how horrible that is, because you're normally hearing the kids, fight or scream or watch TV or you go into the kitchen, the refrigerator door opening and shutting 12 times, try to decide what they're going to eat. All of that's gone. And there's not a peep in the house. It's just total silence. The silence just absolutely screams. And I was just frozen, absolutely frozen. And I called my boss and I said, I can't come into work. And she understood. And I ended up sitting in the house for a year. I never left the house. I couldn't force myself to leave the house. I guess maybe seeing them in the front yard, because, I walked out of a door and then I saw them dead. And, maybe that was the psychological effect that I had. And now and then I'd look out the window and I'd see a car drive by or people walking by laughing or walking their dogs or whatever. And I wonder, what on earth are they doing? How are they having a life when my life, my world completely ended? I just wasn't thinking well at all. So I had some cans of paint in the house, and I painted over the windows. I painted the windows. I painted all the light out of the windows, and I just sat in darkness. That probably took me about a month to figure out to paint out the windows. So for 11 months, I sat in total darkness inside. I had friends that would come over and bring me groceries and check on me very frequently. Well, wonderful friends, because they never told me to snap out of it. They just supported and they just fed me and they just took care of me. Or I would order pizza and have it delivered. I never stepped foot out of the house in a solid year. And of course, I'm sure I just looked a mess. And who could care less? I sat in total darkness. And one day, it was early in the morning, and I was watching TV. I was in the living room. And in the corner of the living room, it was like sparks started firing off. Big sparks, like a sparkler used to set those things on fire. And, bright silvery white light. And it started with just a couple, and then more and more and more and more. And it became like a big rectangle, wide and about a foot a foot tall and maybe 2.5 feet wide, 3 feet wide. And I thought, oh boy, it's an electrical fire. What am I going to do? I can't leave the house. What's going to happen? And I'm just sitting there and I'm watching it just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm thinking, what do I do next? And out of that came two voices. And it was like very well educated and very angry executives. And they start yelling at me, one after the other, two different tones of voices. They sounded like maybe they were in their, 25, 26-year-old, maybe one about 28, 29, 30. They had different tones in their voices. And they start yelling at me and saying, you have got to stop this. We have very important work to do. That is so important. It is so crucial that we do the work that we need to do, but we can't because you're holding us back. You. It's all about you. This has got to stop right now. We cannot do what we need to do because you're holding us back. Your focus on us is keeping us from doing this important work that it has so much benefit to so many people, but it's being stopped because of you. You got to let go. I'm looking at this sparks, thousands of them, like thousands of diamonds. And then the voices are coming, one after the other. And then the other one chirps in. Yes, you got to stop. We got stuff to do. We're here. We're not there, but you're holding us back. We can't progress. We can't do the job that we need to do. And they took turns telling me off. It was like a mean cop. It's like two mean cops telling me off at the side of the road. And I'm thinking, well, I'm sorry. I had no idea I was holding you back. And I instinctively knew it was the boys. They died at 7 and 9, but they sounded like they were 20 years older now and very well educated and very expressive in their speech. And one of them said something that was slightly nice. And he said, we appreciate what you did for us. And that was it. Everything else was telling me off. But that was then, and this is now. And you got to let go, and you got to let go now. We're done with this. This is it. You got your warning. We got work to do. You're holding us back, and it's stopping at this moment. Do you understand it? And I'm just sitting there the whole time. It's like, yes, officer. I'm sorry. I love you. You're my children. You're my flesh and blood. Of course, they're spirits, so there is no flesh and blood. And slowly, the voices stop, and slowly, this rectangular thing of sparkling, gorgeous, beautiful diamond-like flashes, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, just like how it grew. It's reversing. And then it's down to nothing. It was right in the corner of the room. And again, I'm just sitting in darkness. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? I had no idea that my attachment and my mourning them was harming them. I had no idea. I thought I was loving them. I missed them. I missed them so much. I missed them so much that I sat in darkness. I buried myself with them. I didn't realize it at the time, but that I pretty much made a grave in the house. I painted out all the light, like I'm underground too. And anyway, it took a few minutes. It's like, oh my gosh, what happened? What happened? And it's like something changed right then. And I got on the phone and I called my old boss. She had gone and someone else was there. And I said, I'd like to set up an appointment for a job interview. They said, well, we got time in like 2 hours. I said, well, okay, let's do it. And I get cleaned up and gosh, I hadn't cut my hair in a long time. Of course, it's got a ponytail now anyway. But I got cleaned up. I had to have someone come over and jump my car because I hadn't started it in a year. And I went in and interviewed again where I used to work. They knew me. They loved me. No big deal. And I started work the next day after sitting in the house in the dark for a year. That experience of them needing to be free of my attachment gave me the freedom from my own attachment. I mean, it was instantaneous. It just took minutes. And that entrapment in pain and loss and grief was gone. I instantly turned from mourning them to missing them. Mourning somebody's not healthy. Missing someone's healthy. That's okay. But I buried myself alive. So I started working, and there was an opportunity to open up. They were opening up an AIDS inpatient unit. Back then, AIDS was a horrible disease, and it was a death sentence for so many people. In fact, just about everybody. There was basically no treatment. So I instantly changed my focus from being a technical nurse and worrying about lab values and resuscitating. I wanted to be a supportive nurse. So I ended up being a hospice nurse for 17 years. And one of the best lessons I had after that was now I had to get the paint off the windows. And I had some big picture windows and completely covered in paint. And my friends offered to come over and help scrape the paint off. And I said, no, I need to do that. This is a cathartic lesson that I need to learn from this. And a little tiny razor blade. And I just start hour after hour. It took like a month to scrape all the paint off the window. And every time I scraped a little bit off, a little more light came through. I just kept scraping it. I blocked out the light, and I needed to be the one to let the light back in. And I appreciate my friends wanting to help, because we can turn our eyes away from the light. We can think the light's not there anymore. We can think that either someone else put us in darkness or we put ourselves in darkness, but we're separated from that divine, incredible light, that source from wherever. But it's always shining. Just because you don't see it, just because you turned your back against it, just because you choose to look another way, just because you pretend that it's not there and ignore it, it's still shining. It's shining constantly. And it's our responsibility to pay attention to it. It's our responsibility to look at it and learn from it. And what an incredible lesson that was, to scrape for a month. Every little bit of time I had, I went there and scraped, and my fingers were like bleeding. It was a huge job. But finally, all the paint was gone. And from the lessons and from what my boys kind of yelled at me, and I've never separated myself from the light again. You can't. It's an illusion. It's an illusion that you can turn yourself away from it. It's always there. It's always there. It's always got you. It's always uplifting you, but you got to do your part. You just got to pay it a little bit of attention. So I've never been in the dark since. And I couldn't take care of my boys. I couldn't save my boys. I thought they were safe. They were in our own yard. I wasn't there for the fright and the fear and the pain of them being run over. But I could be there for somebody else. And so I became a hospice nurse. And my years in hospice, I kept my notes. I was bedside for 3,600 deaths in my years as working inpatient in the hospice. And every time I started a shift, I said, my patients are going to have the best nurse in the state, and they're going to get the best care. And I'm going to be there for them. And if they're in pain, I'm going to give them pain medicine. And if they're non-responsive, I'm going to touch them with their spirit and feel what they need. And just because someone's non-responsive doesn't mean they're not having pain. And so I would medicate patients that others wouldn't. Well, they're not saying anything, so we didn't, we just let them lay there. That's what some of the nurses would say. And it's like, well, you don't know. Just because you're nonverbal doesn't mean you're not feeling. So before I had even got to work, I could feel what some of my patients were going to need that day. And I would clean them and turn them and change them and give them medicines and talk to them and tell them that they're being taken care of and that they're not alone. I'm going to watch over them. I couldn't do that for my boys, but I could do that for other people's family members. And that's how I became a hospice nurse, 17 years. And 5 of those years was a 10-bed pediatric inpatient unit. We had so many birth defects and kids up to 17 years old. And then after that, I did 5 years of pediatric burn at our local burn center. We would have so many traumatic children and child abuse. People used to put cigarettes out on kids. We get those almost every day, and just love them, hold them, and take care of them. So it's been a marvelous blessing to have been a nurse. What an incredible chance to get to lift and support and take care of people. But you can do that in any job that you got. Standing in line at Circle K to pay for your big gulp, where people standing in line and ignore each other. You can smile at someone. You can just send them some love, whether they accept it or not. It doesn't matter. But the energy and this light, and I think the flow from spirit, it doesn't come down onto us. It doesn't come from out there to here. It doesn't flow to us. It flows through us. Because I can feel that spiritual energy. It like comes from the inside out. And when you get that feeling and that flow, just everything in your life just starts falling right into place. And you can change it at any moment. My experience with the boys, that was my light bulb moment. And of course, that was a big deal. But every now and then, the universe sends us messages, like a dime on the sidewalk, or a bird will do something weird when it flies by you, or you'll drive by something and see somebody, get a flat tire or something. Some little thing that we always just write off as a coincidence. I think it's spirit. I think it's spirit touching in. And it wants us to pay attention to it. And usually it doesn't clobber us over the head. I got clobbered over the head a couple times. But most of the time, it's just these simple, little, bizarre, little funny, quirky things that happen throughout the day. And it's like the universe whispers to us. And you know what happens when someone whispers? You lean forward and you try to hear every word. And then you say, what'd you say? What'd you say? What'd you say? I think the universe whispers to us more often than not because it wants us to lean closer to it. It wants us closer to it. And again, it'll use whatever means necessary to get our attention. And that's my lesson from that. That was life-changing. And because my boys died, I was there for 3,600 deaths of other people and got to uplift them and their family members and their children and their grandchildren and their parents and their grandparents and make the experience for them better. And that's serving. It's been a marvelous life. 42 years, and I retired a year and a half ago. And I think about the lessons I've been taught and the lessons I've been able to teach over the years. So anyway, that's that story.
David, thank you so much for being willing to share. My heart goes out to you in the loss of your sons. As a mother myself, it's hard to wrap your mind around going through something like that. I have so much admiration for you and how you have turned your loss into a way to serve and uplift others. Like I was telling you before the show started, it would take so much strength to do a job like that, to be able to have the mental capacity to see and experience people and children in that much pain. And so I want to thank you for the work that you're doing, that you've done throughout your life.
Thank you so much. It was interesting. I was in a grocery store not too long ago. And this woman came up to me and just, like knocking other people out of the way to get to me. And she says, are you a healthcare provider, or something? Or, have you been around a lot of death? And I'm looking at it, thinking, well, maybe I was the nurse of one of her family members or something. And I said, well, yeah, I was a nurse. Yeah, at the time I still was a nurse. I'm a nurse. And she says, I've never seen anybody with more loving spirits around them than I see around you. What a wonderful thing. Could it be the spirits of my patients that have moved on, that are showing such gratitude for the care that I gave them? I don't know. But she's like an army of them around you. She goes, I've never seen anything like it in my life. I thought, wow, well, isn't that wonderful? I love that. When my time comes, there's just going to be like this big party. I guess. Oh,
That's incredible.
isn't that great?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, David, we've just scratched the surface of what you've been through, the experiences that you've had. So I'd like to direct people to your YouTube channel to learn more and watch some of your videos. And would you like to share with people where they can find you and anything that you have going on?
Yeah, I was starting a cooking channel, but I haven't done a single cooking show yet. It's Uncle Dave's Kitchen, and it's on YouTube. And I've only got a few videos up. I've got 2 more coming. I have a friend of mine that edits them for me. And I certainly have many, many, many more encounters that I've had that I want to share. So please come to Uncle Dave's Kitchen and say hey.
Thank you so much for watching. My guests' links can be found in the description box. If you'd like to support the channel, we have a few fun ways that you can do that. I do have a merch store linked in the description. We've put some of the phrases on t-shirts that you guys requested. I have affiliate links to my favorite blue blockers, my favorite red light panel, and a couple of other companies that I work with. You can join my membership, The Sanctuary. You can sign up for an energy healing. I also offer a 4-session energy healing package. You'll find all these links in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your support. Now go live your most extravagantly loving life.